Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and in today's video, me and the Twitch chat are going to be looking at all of the Age of Sigmar models that were released in 2023, or most of the ones that we could find in 2023, and we're going to be tiering them. And it's also going to be a good way of taking a trip back along memory lane about some of the highs and lows of Age of Sigmar and the miniatures released across that time, which should be fun. So we have created ourselves, well, no, we haven't, I apologize. We as a group, but Calisius specifically, shout out to him from the chat, has created me a tier list, which I will include the link to down below if you're watching this on YouTube, so that you can, if you wish, make your own tier list. Which would be fun. And we've even got ourselves a little breakdown of what we're going to be going through. Eternus, we're going to be going through the Lord of Hubris, Mortis and Ossifector, the Sorus Warriors. We're going to be going through Trug, Rabble Rousers, Free Guild, all sorts of stuff. I think there's like 50 in here, so 670. Oh my god. Okay, so we're going to have to be fairly quick on this, which I think is fun. So let's dive straight in. Our first mini is the Code Right, the Kharadron Overlord's Code Right. He had a lot of books on his back, and there's some great painting on the miniature, which is a little bit daunting for me as not the best painter. I will be reviewing this as not the best painter. I am going to, unfortunately, dock him some points, specifically because he was used to say that people who read rules were pedantic and dickheads, so I'm out on him. Therefore, I think he's a fine model. I'm going to give him a B for the Code Right. I think that's fun. All right, next up, we're going to do Eternus. So this is Eternus. Now, Eternus is, I think, a great sculpt, let down by the paint job. I'm going to call this. I reckon there's some nicer Eternuses out there. I think he looks really good, especially if you want to play something like the Old World. You could have a Chaos Lord Demonic Mount. I think he looks cool, even if you wanted to use him as a unit champion. He's great. He's a great sculpt. And GW normally struggle a lot with horses. They make him a bit too angular. I think this is fine, but I think it's just because it's all metal and that heavy oxidized look. I don't think the paint job actually does a lot for the model. So I don't know if it's any better than the Code Right, though. So I'm going to put him at a B as well. Hot take, though, there is an alternate build for Eternus, or an alternative build for Eternus, and it's good. It's very good. The Lord on Demonic Mount. Ooh, I don't know. I think I might have to pop this bad boy up a tier. I think maybe is that an A? I don't want to shoot my load too early. Is that an A? Okay, he can stay as a B, but that means we're dropping the Code Right. No, okay, they're good. I'm just going to put them as good. That's what I'm going to say, definitely. Next one is Chaos Warriors. So Chaos Warriors were released kind of late 2022, but actually available as their own kits 2023. Chaos Warriors are a great upgrade to an existing kit. I think that they did a great job of changing what was a very monopose, ugly kind of like pose, although iconic in many ways, to a much more dynamic and fleshed out version. I think they look great. I really like them. Are they models of the year? Are they the best models? I think they're really good. Woo! I'm going to have to put them, there's going to be a lot in B, just because I think they're just going to have to be, like, I think the ones that stand out, I might come back and change some of these around. Next up, at the beginning of the year, was the store anniversary Kharadron Overlord's Admiral, and he famously was carrying his own little ironclad in his hands. Pretty cute little model, actually. I really like this. Kharadron Overlord's got a great steampunk vibe, but the overwrought kind of metal paint jobs that they get consistently, I think, makes them sometimes a tad flat. But I think the sculpt itself is great. The beard, this is going as an A. I'm going to say it. I think this is going as an A. I think there's just absolutely everything about this that's excellent. It's got to be an A. It's got to be an A. Like, there's so much on there to paint. There's not a lot of negative space. I will be talking about negative space a lot. If you're a painter, you're going to be obsessed with negative space. But for someone like me who loves to do a dry brush and a wash, then I do like there to be a lot of texture and a lot of vibes on it. So yeah, I think this is great. I think this is an A. Our next unit are Snarlfangs Riders. Now this is an interesting kit. Released alongside the Gloomspite Gitz release. Gloomspite Gitz didn't get many new models, got some, but didn't get many new models. And this is one of those kits that they released, which led, like in the previews, led us all to think that potentially we might be seeing a Git mob, because there's basically the Gits that we have now, Gloomspite Gits we have now, like what were previously in the world that was known as kind of the Moon Clan side of the Gits pantheon. There are many other types of Gits, and one of them, the whatever the ones I just said, I've just immediately forgotten. Git mob, that's it. The Git mob. They're more your kind of like mercantile, not quite as mushroom chasing Git, which is interesting. So when we saw this, we were like, oh my god, there's going to be an entire Git mob addition to the Gloomspite Gits. Didn't happen. Now we know, like a year later, that there's been a war between specialist design studios in Games Workshop Maine, where they've been like carving up the miniatures that are currently on sale into the old world and Age of Sigmar. There's been this just huge kind of rift. And so these may well be, this is kind of backstory we don't need, but it's interesting. These may well these may well have been created specifically just so that Git mob models couldn't be used in the old world, which is crazy. Like, but they're very good. They look more like modern Hobgoblin Wolf Riders. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. But I think that Git mob were Hobgoblins, basically. Either way, these are excellent if you were trying to play the old world. And so, like, you know, the Age of Sigmar, you know, P&L sheet, making the money off it. Either way, as miniatures, I think they're really great. They're super dynamic. Oh, rules-wise, also, they didn't integrate with the rest of the army in any way, shape, or form. It's a very odd release. And I would be interested to know if anyone ever picked them up. And now I'm looking at them, I'm like, maybe I'll pick them up. They're quite great. I think they're great models, actually. I think they're really good. Do I think that they're better than... Would I put them above Warriors? I think I'd be showing some, like, Git bias there if I put them above Warriors. So I don't think they're necessarily any better than the Warriors. I think they are great, though. So I might put them in B. I think B is going to stand for... I think B is great. I think Eternus is great. Warriors of Chaos is great. I think the Code Right is great. And I think these... So I think B is great on my tier list. B is a great choice. A is very good. And then S is just insane. So I think that's going to have to be kind of like the tier system so far. Our next model is another Goblin. A Loom Boss, he's a Loom Boss, a Squig Boss with Nasher Squig. Now, the Nasher Squig is obviously excellent, as all Squigs are, and it's very hard not to have the classic Git bias. But the mustache is throwing me off. I don't like the mustache or the metal face. This is like the mushrooms are cool, all the other bits, but it just isn't quite as like organic enough for me. I get it's quite, the Nasher Squig is covered in metal. It's a whole thing. They're metal faced. I kind of like it, but I'm going to throw it down in C. That's right. Our first C is a Goblin. I can hear the internet screaming at me right now, but I'm going for a C. The next model that was released with maybe the worst promo video of all time, which is just a goat jumping on a car. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It was the Beast Lord. Now, I think this is great. Beasts of Chaos have been very under-supported during Age of Sigmar's life cycle, only getting a warband. I don't think they even got a Warcry warband. They got an Underworlds warband. They got some terrain features, and they got some endless spells. And then we've had this Beast Lord. I personally, and I've said this many times on the show, and I'll say it just to kind of round this off, I think Beast of Chaos is going to get squatted out the game alongside Bone Splitters. I think both those two armies are going out of the game. And now we know for a fact that Old World is selling old miniatures. It makes sense that they're moving into there. Will that come to fruition? I don't know. What should you do with your army if you only collect Beasts of Chaos? Then, well, okay, a couple of things you could do. If you wanted to play Old World, you could get movement trays that turn squares, rounds into squares. That works. But also, you can use these as anything. This, to me, is a Chaos Lord. This, to me, is a Sigmar that's just had a little bit too much of the Mr. Tumnus juice. You know what I mean? They've got a little bit too spicy. I personally am always an advocate for using pretty much any miniature that you want. As long as you and me can agree, makes a lot of sense what's happening on the tabletop, and there's a good story behind it. It's kind of the point of tabletop games, in my opinion. But there we go. Anyway, as a mini, I think he's great. I think Beastmen, and this is why it's weird that they're going away, have got an incredible aesthetic. Obviously, they kind of border alongside everything we've seen with Slaves to Darkness, but I gotta admit, Games Workshop have done an amazing job with the Slaves to Darkness range. When you go to the Cultists part, they're weird and wacky and wonderful, and they do have almost every variety of Cultist for Slaves to Darkness now, which is great. This, I think, is an excellent model, like a bit of a classic pose. A nice little throwback. He's got the Valton pose, if anyone remembers the Valton kit from old Empire, which I've always found to be like the pose. And I also like that it's a mockery of the Valton pose, who was like a heroic figure for the Empire, beastmen of whom like they copied. So I like that. I think the throwback to the Valton pose, and there are a couple of, like, I would say pseudo classic GW poses, and this one is right up there. I've spent a lot of time on this compared to some of the others, and I like this model. I think it's a classic. I don't think it's reinvented anything. I think it's just done what you would expect from a Beast Lord model, but it's done it very well, so I'm going to put it in B. Our next model is a Games Workshop event exclusive Toga Split Eye with two different head options, an un-eye splitted and then a very eye splitted model. I mean, this is a great mini, but I say this a lot about Games Workshop's character models, and my friend Nikos used to say this a lot and kind of like opened my eyes to this, is that most of their character minis are just a mini that could be inside of a unit. And Toga Split Eye doesn't look any particularly more heroic or different to what you might see from any mini or sculpt inside of a Warcry warband. Therefore, like, I feel like when they do these, they know that they're just making money for like a tenth of the work. So I can't not see that. And so I think this is going to end up being my first D. It's not a bad sculpt by any stretch of imagination. I think it's fine. I think it's a fine sculpt. Like, it's really not bad, but it isn't anything that makes me think, a lot of effort has been put into that to put me up to kind of hero status. You know, as a sculpt, it's as fine as the Beast Lord, but I definitely don't get a Beast Lord vibe, so it's going down to a D. The next miniature, and a hot topic for me in the chat, because of its Mesoamerican vibe, is the Realm Gore Ritualist. The long extended leg is a little bit yikes for me. Kind of looks a bit odd, but a great tactical rock. And I think the Mesoamerican take on Khorne is a maybe more interesting way to take it, if not at least artistically open for a conversation about its merit in many ways, and at least if done with, with an homage to I think what he's trying to push. For that, I'm going to put it in the very non-controversial B section, even though it kicked off an incredible conversation. Our next model is the Lord of Hubris from the Hedonites of Slaanesh. A very interesting and controversial model, because I think this is an excellent painter's model, but could have been a unit champ. It could have been a unit champ this could have been an email style model. I think the detail and the quality is excellent, obviously, but no, not any different to any miniature that you would probably see in like a Necromunda kit. But for painters, I think because of the negative space, they're going to be all over this. But I'm not a painter, and therefore it's going in C. That's what I say. Right, who's next? The Mortison Ossifector. Okay, he's pretty cool. Boo! It's boo! Boo from the crowd. I actually want that more. I want more like boo. Like, I want it to be like fucking Panto in the chat. Boo! Some big hair is basically C for codpiece. Yeah, he is walking dick first though. Oh no, you don't. I had way more fun painting the Ossifector than I thought. So Ossifector is pretty cool, because he is right. Like, Pound Shop Hellraiser, rough. It's a rough take, but it makes sense. It doesn't appeal to me as resembling magic, but it's cool in the face. Dude, that's not an A, right? Listen, I'm putting it there because it does a thick boo. Boo. I like boos. Boos are fun. I go for boos now. Right, boo. like a friendly boo in the future. Like if I play a game and someone kills one of my models, I'm gonna be like boo from the back of the room. Boo. Vulgar is B tier. It looks awesome. I like the depth perception Smoke gives the model. A Via Vampire. She's an Uggo. I mean, that's not really, I think, necessarily important. So what's she got? She got loads of little cute bats. I think this is a great sculpt. She's a vampire, clearly. She's wielding an axe, fine. She's doing the bat thing, dynamic. The bats make it. If you didn't have the bats, then I think it'd be like B, because it's just a good sculpt. Do you know what I mean? Like, just generally. But I think the bats really make this model. Ebby Yasha, thanks for subscribing for the first time. It tells you everything, yada, yada, yeah. She's undead. If you find her hot, you have issues. The beast leg does something for some people. It's true. Furries in unite. Furries in the chat unite. I like it without it being the Varicross aesthetic. I love her some Eastern European badass representation. It's true. Those ain't tootsies. For some people, meaning you, I would say I'm going to go for. I'm not sure what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a Via Volga. I think I'm going to put her in. A. The Skink Starseer for Seraphon is an updated sculpt, and I'm going to be controversial here and say that I actually preferred his previous sculpt. However, this does everything I think I want it to do. It's cool, it's fun, it's very well painted. There's loads of detail to paint on as well, which is cool. Like, he's just a cute little slat. This is good. I don't know though. I feel like the chair is good, but they phoned in the skink. It's just like the last one had like some like amazing vibes. He was like in front of his like celestial orb and he was like praying. Yeah, I feel like while obviously I know structurally it's an improvement, the vines and the little edge pieces and all those other things, I actually think the actual skink itself is worse. So I'm going to go for the controversial, and I'm going to get prepared to be booed, C. Next up, continuing on with our Seraphon, we have the Sorus Warriors. Ooh. Sorus Warriors. An upgrade to the previous kit, and I think a significantly improved upgrade. They look amazing on the tabletop. I've seen them several times in person, and I think they look really good, especially with the deep recesses, so you can do some great contrast work. They've always been a bit Spartan. You know, you've got the shields, which are an improvement from the shield previously, and then the club. And I think they do look good, you know, little mini Godzillas. So it's easy to make dinos look derpy. I'm going to put them in B. I'm going to hit them up with a B. Next up is our Agdon on Scarvet. Scarvet on Agdon. The other way around would also be hilarious. A great sculpt, in my opinion. Looks cool. I enjoy the feathers at the back and that his tail goes through the seat, which is a fun bit of thought and design, in my personal opinion. I like this a lot. He definitely looks like a hero, not just like a unit champ of some kind. So I'm throwing this bad boy in the very competent B. B for good. Cigor next. And Cigor look pretty good. There's two types of different Cigor, little mini Godzillas. The Crocodins, I think, are interesting. There's nice definition in the texture. However, a couple of things I think are true. I think the way Games Workshop's design process, or at least in manufacturing process, produces slightly more angular sculpts in some cases than I would want. And therefore, like, that's a nitpick for me. These are definitely a massive glow up on the previous Cigor, which I think most people would agree with. Overall, pretty cool. I'm just going to put it in a B. Next up, we have the Agdon Lancers. I think the Agdons are a cool upgrade. The Cold One Knights previously for Seraphon were probably one of the worst miniatures ever designed by human beings. So therefore, and I know some people like them, but they're wrong. I'm going to say these guys look awesome. They're a great upgrade. I love the little tail feathers. I like the riders. I think they're all very competent. I wouldn't say that they're like stunning, but I do think that they're brave. So I'm going to stick them in B. Next unit are the Raptordon Chargers. Okay, little skinks holding on to little chicken turkey vultures. Now, lots of people, massive fans of these. A lot of people are big fans of these. For me personally, though, D, right? This is just a personal choice. I think these suck, right? Are they technically well done? They're fine. Whatever, right? They're done well. But I think it's ludicrous. Okay, I refuse to engage with these. I think the face is dumb. I think the frill bit's dumb. I can't have like what they got. What they got? Magic sticks now? What they just found magic sticks? I don't know what's going on here. Right? Like they're just now skinks and magical weapon wielding soldiers. It's blowing my mind. I'm out. Our next unit is the Spawn of Chotek. Now this is more my vibe. He's a lizard. Fine. He's got some sort of like electronic mind control device, which I'm like, okay, what's happening right now? But then the skink handlers have got a bit of a vibe to them. They've started to look a little bit like Guild Wars 2-y. You know, they've just got, you're like, oh yeah, we're kind of a species, but also what about weird zany technology? But it passes the vibe check, I think. But as a salamander, which is what it's meant to be, it's not really like got fiery enough. The paint job's fiery, but if you did a bit different paint job, I think it would look weird. So I'm going to stick it in C. The Astroloth Banner Bearer is an amazing upgrade, mainly because the old Banner Bearer would break in half, the actual banner. The banner is good. I say bring back more battle standard bearers into Age of Sigmar. I want more a dude with a flag who does an aura thing, but that's a rules thing. As a mini, he definitely lets me know he's a hero. He's got the big kind of like crest piece, which I think looks excellent. The little, as pointed out in the chat, purple sun is really good. I think this is a real perfect kind of mini in many ways. Also, I know he's a stonky Scarvet. He's armed. He's ready. I think this bad boy's hitting up an A. Next up is the Slan. Amazing reimagining of the Slan, and my criticisms of the Starseer are not replicated here. The chair has had a significant, or the palanquin, sorry, has had a significant upgrade, but so has the Slan, and he's got a dynamic pose while still sitting. Everything about it, I like the jaw element of the bones on the top, all of it, like the little adornments, the snakes at the bottom, the skink attendant, the pots, the potions, the little frog at the side. I'm going to say it now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my first S. My first S. I think this is just, yikes good. The next model, I think it was a Warhammer Plus model, is Zizek. No, that's wrong. Reading that from the chat. Karlina von Karstein. Okay, and there were two head options for this. One of them, which is in Swedish, Jikes, but one of them that is in non-Swedish, the fantastic, this model here. I would say this is stunning, and also, like, the paint job is great. Please, no criticisms from me about the paint job because I can't paint anywhere near as this. Yet, I don't think it's done enough for the model. I think the sculpt itself is wicked. I love the rose around the blade. I love the cup. I love that it's a vampire. I love a heavily armored vampire. Yes, maybe it could look like a unit champion, but there's something about it. Maybe it's the pose. Maybe it's something else. I don't think it's an S, but I think it's a high A. I'm putting it up there as a high A. I think it's like, it's elegant. It's kind of like, it's like the opposite of the Lord of Hubris from the Snesh, where that is doing the same thing. It's kind of like, it's just serving, I think is what they would say on the internet. She's definitely serving, but she's serving much better. So there you go. Marascroll Herald. I think he's missing something. I think, especially as we know coming up, there's more flesh-eater courts. I'm sticking him in C. It's just he's too much, not enough, too much, not good enough. But yeah, he is a C. Next up is Trug. This is easy. This is an easy S. But just talk about some of the things I like about it. I like the little guy inclusion in Trig. So that's his little baby Trug that's on the top right there. I like the elements on top of it as well, like the shrine that's carrying around. I like the conch shell. Actually, as a mini on the tabletop, he's got a very great, he's got a cool pose. And also, I like that it's committing to the Troggoth aesthetic because, and I think that's like in comparison to maybe what you get with the vampire sculpt we looked at a minute ago, the Von Karstein. That's being a fantasy vampire quite well. This is being an Age of Sigmar model. I would say Trug is, the Slan, it was like a reinterpretation of what was a Warhammer Fantasy Battle model. This is perfectly Age of Sigmar. It's got all the elements, it's got some silliness, it's got some coolness to it as well, it's got world building built into it. So I think Trug, for me, hits it up into the S tier. The Rabble Rouser, a little goblin, but in kind of like, is this a unit champ? You definitely can tell, I think, that this is a hero. Goblins are hard to do, obviously, because they're small. It's difficult to put a lot of the detail around. So just a great, and like the obviously the bat squigs add a lot to this mini and this sculpt as well. I think it's really good. The fact that he's a riff off an earlier Gloomspite Gits release where there was a squig and the goblin's feet were kind of sticking out of it. This is kind of the bitch I lived version, which I love, which I think that's hilarious. So there's a nice bit of world building and story building to this as well. Again, like some of the big impressive centerpiece models like Trug are always going to kind of overshadow what is an excellent little sculpt. And I do think he's great. So I think I'm going to put the Rabble Rouser up into A. Yeah, just as context, thank you to Calisius in the chat. For context, here's the previous kind of like version, and then this is what it's riffing off. Very much like earlier on with the Beast Lord and Valtan. There's definitely like the designers are doing little Easter eggs. They're referencing their earlier work. They're referencing other people's work. There's some real nice kind of like early's rock and roll sharing the music vibe going on, which I think is cool to see. The reinvented Ardboys for the Uruks. A very, very interesting take on what was previously Black Orcs. So this is an update to this, but this is not Black Orcs, or these aren't your daddy's Black Orcs. These are Ardboys now. They're different. They're covered in pig iron. They've been Age of Sigmar. They're orcs of a different breed. They literally have a different mentality as well. I think that comes through in the design aesthetic, like these heavily armored, actual, militaristic orcs versus, a rabble of orcs is quite interesting. That said, and I do think they're done very well. I would have liked to have seen maybe slightly more like iconography. Maybe that's like what Age of Sigmar orcs are and what Old World orcs are different. Like there's like a tribal mentality versus kind of like an almost militaristic mentality. They are different, and so those design cues are coming through. But it's not. I think I'm carrying feelings from what they should have looked like. I think they're good. Like, and I guess similar to the Sorus Warriors. I think what they are, and also you got some great opportunity to do some really fun painting on these guys. I've always had a secret desire to do a Bretonia kind of esque orc army or Ironjaw's army. So I think I'm going to put them in B. I think they're solid. They're just not what I necessarily picture as orcs at the moment. And I think that's one of the good things about Age of Sigmar is it's changing my brain on what some fantasy stuff can look like. The Ardboy Big Boss with his fake beard of horns, not like me, with a real beard. As you can see, I think, again, this email, this meeting could have been an email, this phone call could have been an email, this hero could have been a unit champ. He's cool, don't get me wrong, but the hero could have been a unit champ. He's going in C. The Big Pig, the More Grunter. Turns out you can build this in 3 different ways, so you don't need to have the R-Boys on the top, and is a nice kind of upgrade for like what originally started out as a very popular like Gore Grunter units. My issue with this is the Orc on top. We've just been talking about these like beefy, solid, heavily armored orcs, and then you have this kind of distended, weirdly long orc on the top of the More Grunter. I like Big Pig, and maybe the feelings about Big Pig have been orientated because of like obviously you know, the rules and kind of what happened, the way it didn't integrate with the army, and it kind of felt weird. I think I love Big Pig, and I think there'll be some really good versions of Big Pig. Let me look again. A or B? A or B? Big Pig's great. It's got the little dudes on the side. That's very unique. That's very AOS. It's kind of like almost outlandish. It's giving me Orlando Bloom vibes from Lord of the Rings. I'm going to go for A. I'm going to go for A, I think. I'm going to go for A. But, like, yeah, we'll go for A. Oh, no, just say what your heart says, Rob. Let the internet beat you up. It's a B. It's going in B. It's as good as a Turnus, but, like, the rider, the pig's fine. The rider lacks something. The rider doesn't send it for me. That's my issue. Okay, so Zogrok Anvil Smasher is up next, and this kind of personifies my point about, is it a unit champ? He's definitely not a unit champ. His actual kind of like base body build, he is literally a blacksmith. But it's the flaming, molten, sculpted weapon. Sure, you can give me a negative space sword and I can always turn it into a magical blade if I wish. But when it's sculpted in like this, they're like, just so you know, this is a magma weapon, and I would like to see that a little bit more. I'm not saying go pure World of Warcrafty with stupid shoulder pads. I actually think they look great, but like I want to see something that's really letting me know it's serving magic energy, and we're getting some magic weapons out here. So I think that looks really fun. I want that. I want more of that. Sometimes you can have some real world swords and blades and halberds, right? No, I've been shouted at more WoW shoulder pads in the chat. His armor also should probably be better if he is like a forge master. I don't know. But he has got an apron. I'm putting this up there, and obviously we're actually going to come back to the Squig model later on in the rundown. In fact, we could do it now. It saves us time. So he's getting A, obviously, while Anvil Squig straight up to S. It's a no-brainer. Anvil Squig straight up to S. Saves us all some time. That's exactly what I want from little companions. Everything about this is, exactly what you want in my ways. It's world building, it's evocative, it's brilliant. So just let's go for it. Okay, next up are Brute Ragers and Brute Wreckers. I'm going to kind of do these together because they're a dual kit. I think I like the Brute Wreckers more than the Ragers. I like the skull helmets and the flails. I think that's really good. It's just very, very cool. Again, these are really challenging. Are they? Or maybe these are reinforcing my idea of what orcs are, which is why the lower half, the lower armor, is odd. Like, if they were just all loincloth, that would make a lot of sense to me, versus if they're like half lower armor, top half off. But I guess it really lets me know the top half isn't there. It's kind of odd. I'm not really sure how I feel about the lower half armored. I think these are good. They're great. They're a nice kind of unique unit. Orc fanatics, I think is the best way to describe them. I'm going to put them in B. I think they're fine. I think they're good. For Cities of Sigmar, the new release is the Alemite Warforger, and this is a toughie. Because I think Zodric Anvil Smasher is a good kind of a good counterpoint to look at when it comes to a character. And the Alemite Warforger has all of that world building built into the miniature. He's got the flaming pot. He doesn't really sing wizard to me, which he is a wizard, which I find kind of odd. He does literally look like he's someone doing forgery. But then I guess the blazing eyes, the helmet, Maybe humans are just easier, right? Like easier reference points, easier to world build from. But I am going to put the Alemite Warforger up in A because I just think it's a great sculpt. So I'm going to just have to admit right now to having like a strong bias towards the Cities of Sigmar aesthetic. So like objectively, are these sculpts great? I don't know. How do I feel about these sculpts? I think very good. I'm not willing to throw these up into an S because I feel like that's my bias is too heavy there. But I feel definitely it competes up in A. So it definitely is going up into A. Next up, the City Sigmar range are the Steel Helms. Now, I've got loads of positives to say about the Steel Helm, so I'm going to say a negative and get straight out of the bat. There's one model in there that is the banner person, and they decided that the banner arm was going to be attached to the guy who's only got 1 foot on the ground, making it the wobbliest model out of the set. Couldn't go for a 2 wide-legged stance banner hold. Instead, so that's a single problem. Other than this, the whole Cities of Sigmar aesthetic, as I've said previously, is something I'm really pro. Also, and maybe importantly, it's quite clear the design is not that they're heroic. They're not heroes, right? So, judging them on the merit of what they're trying to be, which is a merry band of human soldiery, I actually think they've done that very, very well with some nice kind of archaic and kind of like nods to the mechanical development of the Cities of Sigmar in the shields. So I struggle a little bit. I haven't done any units yet that are up in A, and I don't really feel like they deserve to be up in A, but I think they're brilliant. So I'm going to stick them into B. Next model is Talia Vedra, and I think this has caused a little bit of a kerfuffle on the internet. Talia is great for a couple of different reasons. Number one, some good representation, which we love, especially as a faction leader for an army, especially for humans. The lion model sculpt is actually pretty fun as a mini. And I also own this mini, so I'd like to be clear about my feelings about this mini. The chair is where I fall down on Talia Vedra. I think the chair is cool. It's got a very fun kind of design aesthetic. There's no good shots of the chair, but you can kind of see at the bottom here. But it's just a little OTT. Like, I don't know why she needs like an entire office desk of wood on the back of this monster to go to war. Like, it's not even like she's got a lot of storage in there. If it was full of drawers and she had a lot of equipment in, that would make sense. But I think I just can't get along with the fact that it's the chair. If it wasn't for the chair, if she was kind of mounted in a different way, I think she'd be an S for me. But because of that, she's just going to drop into A because it's just the chair silly. Next up is Pontifex Zestra and her 2 attendants, who she sucks the life out of. Now, like in the Cities of Law, we did do a Cities of Law video. If you never checked it out, so go check it out. We did talk about it, and she might be the reincarnated god of death from the world that was, which is kind of fun. And there's a skeleton at the back of her piece, which is cool. Her palanquin is fun, and the fact that it's being carried makes a lot more sense when you kind of know the lore and stuff. I'm not necessarily certain that comes through in the model. And, I initially reacted very badly to this model when I first saw it. So I'm going to go off that gut reaction that I initially did. I think it's well done. I think it's very cool. I think for the people that do like it, they're going to really like it. But for me, I just, what it's giving off vibe-wise, I'm putting it in C. That's where I'm at. Next up is the Free Guild Cavalier Marshal, and what's to say other than close to perfection in what it's trying to be. I remember first getting into Warhammer Fantasy Battles and having some Empire Knights and being a little bit sad about what they looked like. They weren't great. There were some better sculpts, but this is easily one of the best humans on a horse. And also, this is a toughie to do as well because it has to compete with all of the humans on a horse that we've ever seen, as well as all of the wild and fantastical versions, like Scarvets on Agdons and, Harbingers of Decay and everything else. And I think this absolutely nails it. You get the heavy armored vibe of Cities of Sigmar. It's just good. It's just very, very good. It's going in S. The Cities of Sigmar Command Corps is a collection of 5 heroes, one of which could be a unit champ, the kind of guy at the bottom with the big axe. But the Whisper Blade is great. Old Doc Duke Bones is brilliant. The Gargillian's a bit of a misstep for me, I'm not sure. Sawbones is what I'm all about. I think he looks great. So as a collection, I think it's good, and I think some are a little bit down the tier and some a little bit up the tier. I think the Whisper Blade is excellent. And I know these are individual sculpts, and that's kind of how I've been reviewing it so far, but this is cool. This is kind of like, I like what we got with Steel Helms, but I would have also loved to have seen, a mixture of elves, dwarves, and humans in a pack as a Steel Helm front line. Same with the other kind of like packs of and units. And this kind of gave me that amalgamation, but it is just the human Palooza. It's just a bunch of humans. This is a toughie for me because I think some of the sculpts, especially the Whisper Blade, because it's very elegant, maybe deserve it up in S. So I'm going to drop it into B, but I think it's a really great collection of minis. Just really, really cool. I put it in A, not in B. It's gone in A. So now we have the Cavaliers. So again, from Cities of Sigmar. Again, I don't know if it's my Cities of Sigmar bias coming through. The one thing I will say, is all of it is great, but Games Workshop still struggle to do horses. There's some big knocked knees on those cavalry. If you look at the knees, I've always felt they've struggled to do those well. It does not look like a horse, in my opinion. So I would say that everything else about these models is brilliant. And I kind of struggled with them initially because, you kind of want the knights and lances and those other things. But these are different. These are a heavily armored, castle-like. And again, once you read the lore, you're like, that makes a lot of sense. And what you're picking up from as a mini, I don't know if I'm spending too long now. Am I just justifying an S? Is that what I'm trying to do? I think the knees suck. I'm putting it in A. I like all of it. But the Games Workshop can't sculpt horses. I'll say it live. I'll say it right now. Next up are the Free Guild Fusiliers, and I think these have caused some contention, and I think quite rightly so. Shout out, number one, to the thing that I want most units to have in the future, which is some form of attendant. So the Squire at the back, he's actually on my desk. That's how much I like the Squire. The Squire's great. He's on my desk. The Fusiliers, though, are pretty interesting because most of the model is obscured by those big shields. So there's some really good sculpting done on the front of those minis, heads, arms, options. But the front of those shields take up most of the mini when you look at it. So especially if you did a very good paint job, and you have to paint these in part assembly. So I think it's kind of fine, I guess. But I don't know. I think these are good. They're interesting. They're unique. They're very Cities of Sigmar. They're very their own thing. They're almost like the point, but I'm going to drop them into C. The Fusil Major on Ogre Warhawk is a really interesting sculpt. It reinforces the classist society that you see in Cities of Sigmar as a sculpt. There's an ogre, and the ogre is a bastardization of what ogres should be in the mortal realms. He doesn't have a gut plate, as an example. He's being ridden and not riding something. So these are intentional aberrations from what an ogre would be. And the big shield and the club and everything about it is fun. I think mechanically it confuses me, kind of like Talia's chair. I kind of get it, and that's kind of fun. Maybe if there was a few units of them and it kind of made sense that they built a shield wall of Ogre Warhawks with the guys raining fire down from the top. I don't know. I think it's definitely its own unique creation, which I love to see. So I'm going to put it in B. But if I was being severe, I'd drop it down to C. Next up, we got the Iron World Great Cannon. And, cannons are not really much to write home about. They're generally not that impressive as a sculpt. However, this sculpt turned into a bit of a diorama, which is fun. The big shield covers most of what the cannon is, but I think that makes it a little bit more impressive. You've got this kind of big energy to it, which is super cool. And then you have the 2 different attendants, which is great. Got to shout out my man on the side, though, Barry, drinking, which for me is the most quintessential Warhammer thing maybe ever. Maybe also in Age, maybe especially for Age of Sigmar, I think, just facing down the God of Death with a cannon, getting a bit drunk. Someone says today you're fighting a literal demon from the realms of chaos, and you think, let me just have a drink and I'll fire the cannon. For that emotion alone, and also I think making artillery pieces be more dioramas makes a lot of sense. They dictate the base size. They don't just have to replicate a piece of military history. You don't have to make a great cannon from the French War or whatever, like from back in the day. You can just do your own thing. So I think they should do that more. So I'd like to encourage it. And Barry's my guy. Getting drunk, shooting at the God of Death. You're going in S. That's what you're doing, Barry. Next up, we have Ionis. Cryptborn, a reimagining of a previous Stormcast model. It's very true to say that with Stormcast Eternals, they've just decided to stick them all on dragons, and that makes them all infinitely cooler, which I agree with. Dragons are always cool. The sculpt is cool, definitely. I have said this previously, I'm not a huge fan of the Ionis riding him. I think he's definitely very Stormcasty. He's pushing too Space Marine for me. And I get the skulls and all of that stuff, but it's just too much, and it's just too many skulls. His kneecaps are skulls. He's carrying a skull. His face is a skull. His dragon's got skulls all over him. I'm like, I get it, but so I'm just gonna put that bad boy in B and just say you can just do stuff other than skulls sometimes. Next up, we've got Belthanos, the Kurnoth riding the bug. This kind of came out of nowhere. To be honest, we got Sylvaneth released last year, and we have Alariel already riding the big bug, and we've got some of the fairy riders now as well, which is cool. I was amazed when this came out, and I still am. I think I've seen a bunch of different paint jobs. He looks cool. He's got a great silhouette on the tabletop. He's very unique. Taking the aesthetic from the Kurnoths, mixing Alariel's aesthetic, so we've got this other big bug in the mix now. Is really exciting. I think the paint job is cool. I think it's really unique, and it's also very Age of Sigmar. It's unapologetically it's like Trug. It's unapologetically inside of its own setting. It's different to Trug. It's not quite as goofy. It's got a lot more. It's bright. It could be grimdarked up. It's gonna go into S for me. A lot of negative space for you painters. Negative space. A lot of negative space. Our next model is the Grimhold Exiled, which comes in at an absolutely whopping £22.50. Jikes. Anyway, so he's a Fire Slayer, obviously. And I got to say that I feel like we've got maybe an entire Fire Slayer rework on the cards. We've got Warcry Warband came out recently that looks 11 out of 10. A new store anniversary model looks really, really good. And the Grimhold Exile is sending. He's absolutely serving in a way, and there's loads of toes out, which obviously we're all huge fans of. Could he be a unit champion? Yeah, he could be a unit champion. And dwarfs are hard to sculpt, but I think he's got dynamic energy. He's his own self. I don't hate him. I think he's good. I'm gonna just put him in B, but I think he's great. I think he's a great sculpt. But it's really hard to be incredibly impressed by another Fire Slayer with two hammers on a rock. But B, I think, is very generous for what is the brief. Harbinger Decay is up next for Nurgle, and it's a fantastic sculpt. Really good. Obviously, a reimagining of the previous sculpt that we saw done. The previous Harbinger Decay, which was kind of similar, had a more sick pony. And I think it's a fantastic sculpt. It's also it's also just a Frank Frazetta Death Dealer model. That's what it is. The artwork, and I think inspired by but completely ripped off from is there has to be some negative there. I have to say that. And it's cool that I can buy, a Nurgle Death Dealer by Frazetta as my own thing, but and I didn't know this until I went to the Frazetta Museum late last year. I didn't know that this was just a rip, and so now I feel a bit bad because the previous Harbinger Decay was also one of my favorite minis as well. So, Chaos bringing Frazette energy is exactly what I want, though. Yeah, like, and I agree with you, but like, I don't know, like, at least tell people. Like, S is for stolen. I think it's a homage more than a ripoff. Yes, let's say both. It's a great sculpt, though. Like, if we remove all of those other elements from the conversation, I love it. Everything. The sickly pony. The rocks are a bit weird. The mini itself is great. Everything is just doing it. And again, you don't have to have a lot of skulls. There's a couple of skulls. There's 2 skulls. I'm going to put this in A, right? And I'm going to say that it's very good. I'm going to put it in A. Next up, we have the Ghoul Warden. Here we go. This is an interesting one. All of the keys, the ghoul from the new Flesh Eater course. Now, you'll notice that we aren't doing all of the Flesh Eater course because technically they're not coming out until January of 2024, even though we've seen them kind of like showcased. But just as a quick TLDR, I would put our big man himself, Ushran, in S straight off the bat. And I would put most of the other sculpts in the B to A category, I think, like, because I think they're so solid. Some of them will be unit champs, they'd be down in C, but like, this is good. For this particular model, I like it. I think it's good. It's got a good presence on the tabletop. The keys are a bit fun. Ghouls are a little bit hard to like take a little bit of personality from, I'm going to say. So I'm going to put it in B and just let you insult me. For the other Flesh Eater Courts models, we've got the Varol Cortier, and I don't like the Varol Cortier. I understand exactly the design cues that are being pushed out. The the distended limbs. It's a ghoul that's really turned feral. I think it's a great sculpt for what it's trying to be, but I'm dropping it in C because I just can't handle it at the moment. I just don't. It doesn't give me exactly what I want. Similarly, not necessarily similarly, the Crypt Guard. The Crypt Guard that they released, I think, are very fun. They're very cool. Again, they're not meant to have... I think I need to, very much like what I did with the cities, I need to judge them based on what they're trying to be. And these are trying to be distended ghouls with little pokey sticks. So, it's like zombies. The zombies that Games Workshop sculpted are very good. They're good zombies, but are zombies ultimately cool, I guess? Like, am I talking about the best version of itself? I'm not really sure. So I'm going to put the Crypt Guard in C as well. Now, don't worry if you are a Flesh Eater Courts fan. I'm not going to betray you because the Moreg Knights are 11 out of 10, I think. They do enough with the Moreg Knights that the faces are goofy in some ways. They've added a little bit of fun. There's macabre horror, but there's also... Crypt Ghouls are definitely... Or the Crypt... kind of, the Flesh Eater Courts are definitely trying to bring a lot of fun. So those guys themselves are going to go up into A. Those guys are going to go up into A. So I think they're great. The Grotmas Git was great. The Squig, the face is actually insanely well detailed for a Squig. Normally, they don't put anywhere near as much texture lines on that Squig, but they've really gone for it. And that's actually sculpted into the model, which I think is good as well. So it's Christmas as well. Christmas, a Git, a Squig. It's an A. It's an easy A. Sorry, I said A, but I put it in S. I don't know what's wrong with me. Sorry about that. The Pror Prime, which is an exclusive miniature for the Partworks magazine models, is really good actually for a Stormcast model. Stormcast are having a slim-lined reimagining, and at one point they're going to give up on the gold armor. They're going to realize that it's a mistake. They're going to move to a deep dark brass. I think they'll probably just shift it up to silver because it just does no favors in photography, or even it just doesn't look the way it should. But it's a good sculpt, fun, heroic. Could just be a unit champ. In fact, it is a unit champ, and for that reason, it's going in C, where it belongs. So that's it. There are still all the Warcry warbands to go through, but they are just. It's just taking me a lot longer than I thought to do this. So what was meant to be a fun video. Reviewing these. So tell me what your favorite Warcry warband is over the course. Mine was the Cities of Sigmar guys. I think they were my favorite very much. Had a really fun time. I love those. I think they're good. But I think all the Warcry warbands are excellent. And if anything, the Warcry warbands are kind of my benchmark now for minis that they release in many ways. I think they're so good. The Flesh Eater Corpse one was great with the Ghoul-rillas. I love that as well, just kind of looking across. Skabik's pack was really good as well. I think the Gorges were a bit of a miss. Like if I'm honest, and the Fireslayer one was stunning, as previously mentioned. I think that was good, but I think all of them were really, really good, and I think Age of Sigmar is in a great place. Kind of looking at the list again, like very little was low, to be honest. And B was the these are great. I want to be clear. B in this section was these are great. A, these are stunning, and then S, these are insane. Is kind of where it was, and then C was just, they underwhelmed me. And that's me personally. Obviously, some people aren't going to agree with this. So let me know what you think. Hope you've enjoyed it. And yeah, thanks to the chat. And especially, again, thank you to Calisius from the chat for putting this tier maker together for me. I very much appreciate it. I hope it's been fun. So yeah, it's been really fun hanging out in the chat doing this as a process. We'll do it again in the future. So thanks very much, and thanks for the support.